Who are the TIP? The TIP stands for the Turkestan Islamic Party. Sometimes an older name for the group was also the ETIP, which means the East Turkestan Islamic Party. The group hails from China, and especially from the western province of Xinjiang, which is inhabited by the Uyghur people, their main aim being to create an Islamic state in Xinjiang and to break away from China, thus creating a home for the Uyghur people. To find out more about them, check out this video. Now, the group has been designated a terrorist group by several international organizations and other countries like the United Kingdom. Of course, China also sees them as a terrorist group, and so do Russia, Turkey, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Pakistan, the United Arab Emirates, and Malaysia. The group was founded in the late 1980s, although they go back to older ideas from several scholars from around 1940, who in that time founded a group that sought to gain independence for Xinjiang, although they were defeated by Chinese forces in 1956, leading to their imprisonment. Those who survived were allowed to be free in 1979, one of these being Abdul Hakim, who went on to teach in several religious schools in Xinjiang to revive the movement. Another important figure is Dia Uddin bin Yusuf, who took over the group following Hakim's death in 1993. In 1990, the group was involved in a revolt in the town of Baren, which led to a heavy Chinese crackdown in Xinjiang when relations had been fairly decent beforehand. Where most of the group's leadership was imprisoned, Hassan Mahsum became the new leader in 1997 and went to several nearby Muslim countries such as Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey to gain support. However, none of these governments were willing to risk angering the Chinese, and so he gained no help from them. However, in 1997, he announced a new campaign in Xinjiang that would right the wrongs of previous leaders and take a more violent approach to their struggle for independence and jihad. They would in 1999 move their base of operations to Afghanistan, a country that had recently had its own Islamist takeover in the form of the Taliban, there setting up training camps to train volunteers to commit attacks in China itself. Of course, in 2001, the United States and their allies would invade Afghanistan, and several of these camps were destroyed. 2 years later, in 2003, Hakim would himself be killed in a US airstrike, as would many other of the Uyghur fighters. Nevertheless, in 2008, the group resurfaced with several attacks in China and abroad. They threatened the Beijing 2008 Olympic Games, although ultimately they didn't attack any of the games when they were happening. This was under the new leadership of Abdul Haq al-Turkestani, who became the new leader of the TIP movement, and himself and several other TIP members are known to have been very high up in Al-Qaeda, having close relations with Osama bin Laden and the group's workings, although they wouldn't officially declare their allegiance to Al-Qaeda until 2016. The group has been responsible for several phases of terror attacks, largely inside China. Analysis of these attacks shows that they are increasing in scope and capability. So from 1992 to 98, they mainly focused on killing imams that were against their message in Xinjiang itself, whereas in 1997 they started pioneering bus bombings throughout China. From 2007 to 2008, they were particularly active, killing both civilians in Pakistan as well as paramilitary groups in Kashgar. They were also responsible for more bus bombings in Kunming and attempted a plane hijacking in Urumqi. In 2010, a plot was uncovered in Norway to again attack a plane, while there were further attacks in mainland China. And from 2014 to 2015, perhaps their most evocative attacks were several mass stabbings, particularly that in Kunming at a railway station that left over 100 people dead. Though I should note that the TIP haven't themselves claimed responsibility for the attack, although it's likely that they are responsible or connected. From 2016 to 2021, more attacks have been taking place, including in neighboring Pakistan and Kyrgyzstan. The Kyrgyzstan example being a bombing of the Chinese embassy there, while in Pakistan in 2021, Chinese workers working on a dam were attacked and killed by the attackers. It may be the case that in the future we also see attacks in Afghanistan, as while beforehand they had had close relations with the Taliban actually ousted the remaining TIP training camps force in 2021 following their takeover as a result of trying to gain favor with China, who had been in talks with the new Taliban government. I should also mention that the TAP and other Uyghur jihadists have been fighting on the battlefields of Syria, particularly in 2016, where these groups, together with Syrian jihadists, were crucial during the Battle of Aleppo. They continue to fight in China, and while some have suggested that they may actually be false flag attacks from the Chinese, there is substantial evidence to suggest that the TIP is very real, although China does use these attacks to further their discrimination against people in Xinjiang and against the Uyghur as a whole, seeing them as a terrorist threat inside the population and therefore dealing very roughly with the population as a whole. It's probably because of politics between the United States and China in recent years that the United States in 2020 removed the TIP from their terrorist list. This wasn't because of any change in TIP activity, but rather because of the US-Chinese rivalry. It seems, however, for certain that the TIP will continue in their attacks in China, particularly as the Chinese government steps up their discrimination against the Uyghur people. They're likely to be drawing more recruits every day.